I never thought I'd be the kind of person to end a marriage with a few strokes of a pen. But there I was, sitting in the dull gray office of the county courthouse, holding a pen that suddenly felt heavier than my entire life. This is not a joke, I told myself. I signed the papers today. The clerk behind the counter smiled politely, probably used to people like me, half numb, half confused, unsure whether to cry or laugh. I managed to say, "Thank you," as she stamped the final document and slid it back to me. The sound of that stamp echoed in my ears like a closing door. When I walked outside, the sunlight hit my face sharply. It should have felt like freedom, but it didn't. It felt like stepping into a new world where nothing made sense yet. I stood there on the courthouse steps, staring at the papers in my hand. My name, his name, the official seal, just like that. 5 years of love, fights, and memories were reduced to a few printed lines. It had been coming for months, maybe even years. Daniel and I had stopped talking about dreams and started talking only about bills. We weren't cruel to each other. That was the problem. We were polite. Too polite. Like strangers who had agreed to share a house out of convenience. I used to believe that love could survive anything. Distance, time, mistakes, but silence was stronger than all of them. I walked to the cafe across the street, the one we used to go to every Sunday morning. I hadn't been there in months. The same barista was behind the counter, and when she saw me, she smiled as if nothing had changed. "The usual?" she asked. I nodded, though I wasn't even sure what my usual was anymore. When the coffee came, I sat by the window watching people hurry by. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go, someone to meet. I took a sip and realized the coffee was bitterer than I remembered. Maybe it had always been that way, and I was just tasting it properly for the first time. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. Just 2 words, "You okay?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "I don't know." Then I put the phone down and turned it face down on the table. A small part of me wanted him to walk through the cafe door like in the movies, to say it wasn't too late, that we could fix it. But another part, the tired, honest part, knew that if he did, I might not go back. Not because I didn't love him anymore, but because I finally understood that love alone wasn't enough. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering a few yellow leaves against the window. Autumn had arrived quietly, the same way endings always do. I took a deep breath, folded the papers neatly, and slipped them into my bag. They weren't just legal documents anymore. They were proof that I had done something hard, something real. I had chosen to stop pretending. As I left the cafe, I noticed a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a small bookstore down the street. I smiled for the first time that day. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. For a moment, I reached to the other side of the bed, half expecting to find Daniel there, his arm slung over me like it had been for years. But my hand met only the cool, empty sheet. Reality settled in again. I had signed the papers. I was alone. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the first light spill across the city. It was strange, peaceful but hollow. I thought of the "Help Wanted" sign I'd seen at the bookstore yesterday. Maybe that was a sign, too. Something new, something small but mine. By 9 o'clock, I was standing outside the shop, a bell chiming softly as I pushed the door open. The smell of old books, paper, and dust wrapped around me like an old blanket. A woman in her 50s looked up from behind the counter. "Good morning," she said warmly. "Can I help you?" "I saw the sign," I replied. "Are you still looking for someone?" She smiled. "We're always looking for people who love books." Her name was Clara. We talked for a while about my old job in marketing, my reading habits, the way bookstores were slowly disappearing. When she asked when I could start, I said, "Today," without even thinking. And just like that, I had something new to wake up for. The first few hours passed quietly. I shelved books, dusted tables, and listened to the soft hum of the shop. People came and went, students, old men, mothers with kids tugging at their hands. Every one of them seemed to be searching for something just like me. At lunchtime, I sat outside on the bench by the window, eating a sandwich and scrolling through my phone. There was another message from Daniel. "I found your sweater in the laundry. Do you want me to drop it off?" I hesitated before replying. "You can leave it with the doorman." A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No more messages. I sighed and put my phone away. Some conversations were better left unfinished. That evening, when I got home, I found a small paper bag at the front desk. Inside was my old gray sweater folded neatly and a note. "You always said this was your lucky one. Maybe it still is. D." I sat on the couch holding the note in my hands. It wasn't love, not anymore. But it was kindness. Maybe that was enough for now. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, life began to take shape again. The bookstore became my refuge. I learned how to recommend novels to shy customers, how to restock shelves, and how to make perfect coffee from the old machine in the back. Sometimes I'd catch myself, laughing with Clara or humming, along to the music playing softly from the radio. And sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd think of Daniel not with anger or sadness, but with gratitude. We'd shared a chapter, and now it was over. That didn't make it meaningless. One rainy evening, a young girl came into the store, soaked from head to toe. "Do you have a book about starting over?" she asked, shivering. The cursor blinked on the empty page like a heartbeat. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had no idea where to begin. Should I write about Daniel? About the marriage? About how endings can feel both like death and rebirth? After a few minutes, I decided to stop thinking and just start typing. "This is not a joke. I signed the papers today." That first sentence, the same one that had haunted me, became my opening line. From there, the words began to flow, spilling out faster than I could process them. I wrote about love and silence, about mistakes and forgiveness. I wrote about the coffee that tasted bitter, and the bookstore that smelled like second chances. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't just remembering, I was creating. Over the next week, I wrote every night after work. The story grew piece by piece, raw and honest. Clara noticed the dark circles under my eyes and laughed. "Looks like someone's caught the writer's bug," she teased. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm just trying to understand my own story." She nodded knowingly. That's how all the best ones begin. The day of the author event finally arrived. The bookstore was buzzing with people, tables stacked with books, strings of fairy lights draped across the ceiling, and a soft scent of coffee and old paper in the air. Local writers read their work aloud while customers listened, some smiling, some wiping quiet tears. Clara nudged me. "You should read something too." I shook my head immediately. "Oh no, I'm not ready." "Ready is overrated," she said with a grin. Besides, stories aren't meant to stay hidden. Before I could protest, she'd already added my name to the open mic list. My heart pounded. What was I doing? When my turn came, I walked to the small wooden podium, clutching my pages like a lifeline. The crowd quieted. I took a deep breath and began to read the first few paragraphs of my story, the divorce, the loneliness, the rediscovery. Halfway through, my voice steadied. The words that had once felt like pain now felt like power. I wasn't ashamed anymore. When I finished, the audience was silent for a moment, then broke into gentle applause. "Thank you," I said softly, almost to myself. Afterward, as I was helping clean up, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and froze. It was Daniel. He looked different, tired, thinner, but familiar in that way only someone you've loved can be. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, my heart stuttering. "Clara invited me," he admitted. "She's an old friend of my aunt. She didn't know who you were until today." I blinked in surprise. "Oh, I heard your story," he said. "You were honest. It was beautiful." "Thank you," I replied carefully. "It wasn't easy to write. I could tell," he said quietly. "I guess I needed to hear it." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled faintly. "You seem happy, different." "I think I am," I said truthfully. "It's strange, but I'm starting